She once laughed at me for not being big enough. Years later, I signed a billion-dollar deal. And said 7 words that made her break down in tears. But this is not a story about revenge. It is about humiliation, sacrifice, betrayal, sleepless nights, and the woman who nearly broke me. Then helped me build an empire. Stay with me. Because what happened after the success changed everything. The night she mocked me. I was worth less than the suit I wore. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. That smelled of instant noodles. And unpaid bills. Rain slipped through the cracked window frame. Cold air touched my face. As she laughed. At least my ex was bigger, she said. Bigger salary. Bigger house. Bigger man. Her words were light. But they landed heavy. I had just lost my 3rd business. Bank account empty. Phone silent. Friends gone. I felt small. Smaller than her memory of him. I looked at my hands. Calloused. Shaking. Then I said one thing. If size is what you want, give me time. She stopped smiling. Because I did not sound angry. I sounded certain. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. The city smelled of wet concrete. And burnt coffee from the corner stall. I worked 2 jobs. Studied at night. Failed again. Investors rejected me. One called me delusional. I came home exhausted. She placed warm food in front of me. No jokes. Only quiet support. One evening, I found her selling her jewelry. Family gold. Her security. For your prototype, she said. Her voice steady. Her eyes trembling. That sacrifice burned inside me. Stronger than humiliation ever could. Years passed. The apartment turned into an office. The office turned into a tower of glass and steel. With my name on it. Reporters called me a visionary. They did not see the nights I cried in the bathroom. So she would not lose faith. They did not see her editing my pitch decks. While fighting sleep. The day I signed my first billion-dollar deal. My hands trembled again. Not from fear. From memory. At the celebration party. Someone mentioned her ex. The room laughed. She looked at me. Uncertain. I stood, raised my glass. And said, he was bigger. He made her believe she deserved more. That is why she chose me. Her eyes filled. Because success was never revenge. It was growth. Later that night, as the city lights reflected in our penthouse windows, and silence wrapped around us, she held my hand, and whispered something that changed everything. She whispered, I was wrong that night. Her voice carried no pride, only memory. The man I compared you to, never fought for anything. You fought for us. The city shimmered below us. Gold lights flickering like distant applause. But inside that room, it was quiet enough to hear her breath tremble. I remembered the rain in that old apartment. The smell of damp walls. The sting of her laughter. I had built companies. Built wealth. Built a name that opened doors. But I had never rebuilt that moment. I needed you to hurt, she said softly. I was afraid you would settle. Her words struck deeper than the joke ever had. All those years, I believed I was proving myself to her. Now I understood. She had been fighting too. Fighting her fear of poverty. Fighting the shadow of a past. Where love meant comfort, not courage. I sold my gold, she continued. Because I saw your fire. I just did not know how to protect it. Without pushing you. I walked to the window. The glass felt cool beneath my fingertips. Billionaire. Visionary. Self-made. The world loved those words. But they never saw the mornings. She ironed my only good shirt. While I doubted myself. They never saw her reading contracts. With tired eyes. So I would not sign away our future. Success had a headline. Sacrifice did not. I turned back to her. The same woman who once wounded my pride. Had also watered my resilience. Pain had shaped me. But love had refined me. I was never competing with him, I said. I was competing with the man I feared becoming. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Not from shame. From release. In that moment, I realized something powerful. The joke was never about size. It was about belief. And belief is the greatest investment anyone can make. She stepped closer, resting her forehead against my chest. I am proud of you, she whispered. But I am more proud of who you became. Outside, cameras flashed in the distance. Inside, we stood still. Yet even with billions in the bank, a new test was already forming on the horizon. A test no contract could protect us from. 3 days later, the board called an emergency meeting. Market shift. Aggressive competitors. A hostile takeover attempt. From a man I once trusted. He had smiled at my table, shaken my hand, called me brother. Now he wanted control. The headlines changed overnight. From visionary to vulnerable. I felt that old tightness in my chest. The same suffocating doubt. From the apartment with cracked windows. Billionaire meant nothing. When fear returned, I stayed in my office past midnight. The city lights no longer looked golden. They looked distant. Failure whispered again. Maybe I was lucky. Maybe I was temporary. The door opened softly. She stepped in, carrying 2 cups of black coffee. No diamonds on her wrists now. No gold to sell. Just steady eyes. You look like the man from that rainy night, she said. I might lose everything, I answered. My voice felt unfamiliar. She placed the cup in my hand. Warm. Grounding. You built this once from nothing, she said. You can rebuild from something. I looked at her, searching for fear. There was none. Only belief. You taught the world to bet on you, she continued. Now bet on yourself again. The words settled into me, like iron into foundation. I realized wealth had changed my address. But struggle had built my spine. I opened the financial reports again. Not as a victim. As a strategist. If they wanted control, they would have to outwork me. She stayed beside me. Through projections and negotiations. Through tense calls and silent calculations. At dawn, with the sky turning pale blue, I saw the opening. A counter move bold enough to protect everything. Risky. Uncomfortable. Brilliant. I turned to her. If this fails, we start over. She smiled softly. We have done that before. And as I reached for the phone, to make the call that would decide our future, I thought of that cracked window. Of rain slipping through cheap wood. Of a joke that once felt like the end. I dialed. My voice was calm. Clear. Unshaken. I offered terms no one expected. A merger reversal. Equity restructuring. Employee stock protection. If they wanted power, they would have to protect the people who built it. Silence filled the line. Board members whispered. Lawyers shuffled papers. I felt her hand rest on my shoulder. Steady. Certain. Minutes stretched. Heavy as years. Then the lead investor spoke. You are serious. I am prepared, I answered. Another pause. Then agreement. Not applause. Not celebration. Agreement. The takeover dissolved before sunrise. Control remained with us. But something inside me shifted deeper than victory. For the first time, I did not fight to prove myself. I fought to protect what we built together. When I hung up, the sky had turned gold. She exhaled slowly, as if she had been holding that breath for years. You did not chase size, she said gently. You built strength. I smiled. Not the smile of triumph. The smile of understanding. Pain had refined me. Betrayal had sharpened me. But love had anchored me. Reporters would write about strategy. About bold leadership. About financial genius. They would never write about the woman who once wounded my pride, and then forged my resilience. I turned toward her fully. There is something I never told you, I said. Her eyes searched mine. In that apartment, when you laughed, I almost gave up. The air grew still between us. But I stayed because I saw fear in you too. Her breath caught. And I promised myself that if I ever rose, I would lift us both. Tears traced down her face again. Not from regret. From release. Outside, the city awakened to another ordinary day. Inside, I was preparing for an extraordinary decision. That would change more than our company. A decision that would test the very meaning of wealth. That afternoon, I called for a global address. Executives filled the auditorium. Employees streamed in online. Analysts waited for numbers. They expected expansion. Another acquisition. Another headline. I stepped onto the stage. Lights bright. Air cool against my skin. I saw my reflection on the massive screen behind me. Tailored suit. Measured posture. No one could see the man who once counted coins for bus fare. I built this company from rejection, I began. From humiliation. From doubt. The room was silent. But I did not build it alone. I told them about sacrifice. About resilience. About the power of someone believing in you. Before the world does. I announced a foundation. Not for publicity. For entrepreneurs with nothing but ideas. And someone at home. Who believes in them. Seed capital. Mentorship. Protection from predatory investors. Gasps rippled across the hall. Profit would shrink this quarter. Share prices might tremble. I felt the old fear try to rise again. Then I saw her in the front row. No jewels. No spotlight. Just quiet pride. I once chased size, I said. Bigger deals. Bigger rivals. Bigger victories. A pause. Now I choose significance. Applause began slowly. Then grew. Not for wealth. For purpose. When I stepped off the stage. She met me backstage. You just risked everything again, she whispered. I nodded. Yes. But this time, I said softly. I am not proving anything. Her eyes searched mine. I am becoming something. She held my face in her hands. The same hands that once sold gold. For a fragile prototype. The same hands that steadied me at midnight. In her gaze, I saw no fear of poverty. No shadow of comparison. Only partnership. And as investors began requesting urgent meetings, and headlines started rewriting my legacy, a new challenge approached. One that would test not my fortune, but our unity. The challenge arrived in the form of temptation. An international conglomerate requested a private meeting. Their offer was simple. Sell majority control. Step down as chief executive. Remain the public face. In return, they would triple my net worth overnight. Generational wealth. Absolute security. The number on the screen looked unreal. More than I ever imagined. On those nights of instant noodles. And unpaid rent. My executives urged acceptance. Think of the legacy, they said. Think of the safety. Safety. The word echoed strangely. I returned home late. The penthouse was quiet. She stood by the window. Watching the city breathe. They want control, I said. She did not ask how much. She asked one thing. What will it cost you inside? I hesitated. Control meant vision. Vision meant impact. Selling meant comfort. But also surrender. I remembered the foundation I just launched. The young dreamers who would depend on it. I remembered the boardroom fear. The cracked apartment window. If I chose comfort now, what lesson would remain? They can make us richer, I said slowly. But they cannot make us stronger. She stepped closer. Then choose strength, she whispered. Not demanding. Not pushing. Simply reflecting back the man I had become. The next morning, I declined the offer. Shock rippled through the financial world. Analysts called it reckless. Competitors called it pride. But inside, there was peace. Our wealth remained vast. Our control remained intact. More importantly, our purpose remained alive. That night, as we sat together in silence, she rested her head on my shoulder, and said something that shook me more than any deal. I am ready to build something of my own. Her words did not come with hesitation. They came with quiet fire. For years, she stood beside me. Editor. Strategist. Believer. Now she wanted her own mountain. A foundation for women. Who sacrificed dreams. To support someone else's. Education. Capital. Second chances. I felt pride rise first. Then fear. Not of her failure. Of losing the rhythm. We had built together. What if it consumes you? I asked softly. She smiled. It already does. I saw it then. The same hunger that once burned in me. When investors laughed. The same refusal to settle. Had I grown so strong, that I forgot to make space. For her strength, success had changed our address. But ambition was still sacred between us. If you do this, I said, I will not lead it for you. I do not want you to, she replied. Only partnership. Not protection. The next week shifted our world again. Press conferences now asked about her. Not as my wife. As a founder. Critics questioned her credibility. Called her fortunate. Privileged by proximity. I saw the hurt in her eyes one evening, as she read a headline. It mirrored my own pain from years ago. "They think I am only your extension," she said quietly. I took her hands. They once thought I was a joke. Silence settled between us. Then determination. She worked late into the night. Research papers scattered across the table. Video calls with women across continents. I watched her transform. Not behind me. Beside me. And when she prepared to deliver her first global speech, her fingers trembled slightly. "Are you afraid?" I asked. "Yes," she admitted. I smiled gently. "Good. That means it matters." She walked toward the stage lights. Not as the woman who once compared me. Not as the billionaire's wife, but as a force shaped by love, regret, sacrifice, and growth. The auditorium grew silent as she reached the podium. And just before she began to speak, she looked at me in the front row. And in her eyes I saw the same question I once carried. Do I belong here? I did not nod. I did not gesture. I simply held her gaze. The way she once held mine. When I had nothing but a fragile idea. And wounded pride. She turned to the microphone. Her first word trembled. The second steadied. The third carried strength. "I once believed security was found in someone else's success," she began. I was wrong. The room leaned in. I learned that true security is built when two people refuse to let fear define them. Her voice deepened with conviction. She spoke of sacrifice without bitterness. Of regret without shame. Of growth without ego. She told them about selling her gold. About watching a man rebuild himself. After humiliation. She did not hide her mistake. She honored it. "I once measured worth by comparison," she said. "Now I measure it by courage." Applause rose slowly. Then powerfully. Not because she was married to me. But because she was honest. I felt something shift inside my chest. For years, I thought I carried us. Now I understood. We carried each other. Through doubt, through pride, through transformation. After the speech, young women surrounded her. Tears. Questions. Hope. I stood back. Not overshadowed. Not threatened. Grateful. That night, back home, the city lights flickered beneath us again. Different from the night of the joke. Different from the night of the $1 billion deal. She removed her heels and laughed softly. "Was I enough?" she asked. I walked toward her slowly. "You were more than enough," I said. She studied my face carefully. "For years," she whispered, "I feared losing you to ambition." I felt the weight of that truth. Success demands attention. But love demands presence. I reached for her hands. "There is something I must choose now," I said quietly. Her expression shifted. Not fear. Readiness. Because the next chapter would not test our wealth, or our reputations, but the balance between empire and family. The decision I faced was not about profit. It was about presence. Another expansion waited on my desk. A new continent. A larger valuation. But across the room, she was reviewing applications. From women who had postponed their dreams for years. I watched her. Focused. Purposeful. Alive. For the first time. Growth did not mean getting bigger. It meant getting wiser. That night, we sat without screens. Without advisors. Without noise. "I can build another tower," I said quietly. "But I cannot build another life if I miss it." She did not answer immediately. She only reached for my hand. The same way she did. In that cold apartment. When everything felt uncertain. The next morning. I stepped into the boardroom. Calm. "I will not lead the expansion," I said. Gasps followed. "I will mentor the next generation instead." Some called it stepping back. Some called it foolish. But I knew the truth. Power is not proven by control. It is proven by restraint. I shifted into a chairman role. Reduced travel. Focused on building leaders, not headlines. At home. We built something quieter. Dinners without urgency. Conversations without strategy. Laughter without comparison. Years ago, a careless joke wounded my pride. Today, that same moment stands as the spark. That forged discipline, resilience, and purpose. She once measured worth by size. I once measured worth by success. Now we measure it by impact. Wealth gave us comfort. Struggle gave us character. Love gave us direction. If there is a lesson in our journey, it is this. Humiliation can break you, or build you. Comparison can shrink you, or sharpen you. But belief, especially when shared, can transform two imperfect people into something extraordinary. I was never chasing a bigger man. I was becoming a better one. If this story touched your heart or inspired you in any way, please like the video and subscribe to Twisting Stories for more powerful journeys of love, struggle, and success. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that growth is always possible.